welcome to the third of our People Behind the Project webinar series. My name is Dylan. I'm the social media communicator for the Fish and Cat Conservation Alliance. For those of you who are joining one of these webinars for the first time and may not know what it's all about, we started this project series to give you the opportunity to meet the people who got their fish and cat conservation project started, to hear what matters to them most, who inspires them, to hear their stories, and how did they get to where they are today. Before we get started, I would like to wish everyone a happy Fish and Cat February and to thank you on behalf of all of the FCCA for all of your beautiful artwork, for helping us advocate for the fishing cat, and also for helping us replace damaged and stolen camera traps. We are all completely overwhelmed by how much you have done for us, how much you've done for the fishing cat. Your artwork is beautiful. So thank you, keep it up. We have a long month to go and we're really excited for it. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest. We are joined by Murthy Kantimahanti, chairperson for the FCCA, founder and lead conservation scientist of the Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society, as well as associate scientist of global wildlife conservation. So Murthy, it's an honor to have you here. You have a remarkable story to tell of not only the fishing cat, but also a plethora of other wildlife found in the Eastern Ghats. Your work in local communities, raising awareness, tackling human-wildlife conflict is beyond admirable. So with that introduction, I'd like to get started. For those of you who are watching live, we want to welcome you to ask any questions you might have on the Facebook live stream, and we'll try to get to them as much as possible. So Murthy, you have fully invested your life into wildlife work. Can you tell us how you got here? Where did this passion for wildlife in the Eastern Ghats come from?
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and congratulations, Dylan. This is a great series. Thank you very much for coordinating and organizing this. So it all started as a child. I strongly believe that environmental influence has a huge impact on, the surrounding environment, the way you live, the places where you grow up, the things you see, the things you experience has a profound impact on any individual, in fact, that actually decides the course of actions and your behavior over a period of time as you grow into an adult. So I think I grew up, as a kid, our house was quite close to a mountain range, a small patch of Eastern Ghats, and surrounded by thick mango and cashew plantations. So it's almost like a life in the wild. That's how I lived my childhood, watching animals in the backyard and going for snake rescues. And so that ignited my passion towards wildlife in one dimension. But then I also had this exposure at the local zoo. So I'm greatly indebted to the local zoo here in our hometown of Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, because I used to volunteer there when I was around 14 years old. And I used to go there, educate the visitors, at the reptile enclosures and other carnivore enclosures. And also he used to help my uncle, who would organize education programs there every Sunday, on every weekend. And so that's how I got an exposure to live animals that are native to Eastern Ghats, animals like wild dogs, uh, jungle cats, rusty spotted cats, and then, of course, a lot of reptiles and birds, because the local zoo has a good collection of this native wildlife. And that's how really my passion started. And then I started thinking that this is where we live. It's my backyard, the Eastern Ghats. And comparatively, if I used to see, there has always been a lot of attention and work going on in the Himalayan region, central India, Western Ghats, but there weren't any organizations back then working for Eastern Ghats wildlife conservation exclusively. So, a thought struck in my mind, that we should save our wildlife. We should actually work towards their conservation here in the Eastern Ghats. And so since then, I choose this path. I also did my master's in zoology. And in fact, I literally had to fight with my parents and went on a hunger strike as well without eating for a couple of days because they wanted to put me in mathematics stream that takes you altogether in a different path. But that's how I planned my career, including my educational background, because zoology has always been my passion. Studying animals, learning about them, watching them, observing them, and of course conserving them. It's a totally different ball game altogether. You don't have to have a academic degree for saving animals that you love. So that's how it started when it quite early. I mean, I don't really remember, but it started quite early as I was 7, 8 years old. I can remember still. Our school was also quite close to forest. It was surrounded by plantations. We used to have so many birds and snakes, and I uh, I never found. I'm sort of a backbencher, like what we say that people don't study well. They usually sit in the back seat, and I used to sit there and watch, peep through the window, watching birds and any snakes on the branches, and always not at all attentive because the classroom environment. I wasn't really fascinated right from the word go, and but I don't recommend that to to be like that for everyone because I always believed going out, observing and learning things is more practical. Nonetheless, a solid foundation, a theoretical foundation is also required. So that's how it all started in the very beginning.
So you said that your uncle did what you call educational programs, and did he have a
Yeah,
certain focus of wildlife? How did you get into fishing cats? Was it from his work or another place?
yeah. So again, when I used to study about wildlife in the Eastern Ghats specifically, I always had a keen interest in rare animals, unusually sort of not so common, uncommon species, rare species, because I always believe that they need conservation attention on a priority basis. Um, it's not that the common animals can be ignored or hunted down, but still, I always had a very keen attention and fascination for rare animals. It's not only because they are rarely seen, but it also because it's something that their population is on the decline and they need protection. So I always used to keep a track of all those rare, uncommon species along the Eastern Ghats, and I knew fishing cats were not so common even back then. Um, but then, yeah, one incident really surprised me. A fishing cat was caught accidentally in a feral dog trap that was laid by the local zoo authorities, and that's when the first fishing cat report was reported. The sighting was reported from the local zoo, and I had a privilege as I was working as a biologist there back then. I had the privilege of seeing the fishing cat up close. It was a healthy male, very ferocious. I mean, people working with fishing cats would know that they are not afraid. I mean, they stand their ground if they see a human. um, the cat was pretty healthy. It was treated for some minor wounds that it sustained during the when it tried to escape from the cage, and it was released back in the wild because the zoo is quite unique. Again, Vizag Zoo is part and parcel of the Eastern Ghats because it's sandwiched between the mountain ranges, and the zoo. There were free-ranging animals. They still are, like leopards and of course fishing cats, jungle cats, and jackals, and we also had a couple of rusty spotted cats that were rescued from primate enclosures. And so this is how it is. Like the zoo where I used to go and learn about animals, volunteer, was part of the forest, and then my house was part of a forest, and then of course it still is, and then my school was also part and parcel of the Eastern Ghats. So it's almost like I was living in a jungle all the time. um, so that day, I mean, it was quite surprising. Coastal city of Visakhapatnam has very a lot of good wetlands and even mangrove patches. But then I never expected a fishing cat to, surface all of a sudden on one fine morning. But then that is when I saw the fishing cat up close, and some sort of interest started generating. It was back in 2012, and I started growing curious. I started thinking about what likely places the cats must be there, because it's not a stray incident. It's right in the heart of the city, and there must be a small population living somewhere in and around. It was very interesting observation. And then I started surveying as well. I started digging out any historical records from in and around the north coastal region of our place where I live. And to my surprise, I found that many newspaper clippings, as well as reports of fishing cat sightings, as well as retaliatory killings, and some level of conflict with local communities was already there in other places. And most of them didn't know that it was a fishing cat. They thought it was just a young leopard, or some spotted cat or whatever. Um, it's because of ignorance. I'm not blaming anyone for that. But then that's when I started, that's exactly when I thought, okay, now the fishing cat is right in our backyard. It's found across the region. Now something can be done for its conservation. We started surveying other landscapes, other areas in Andhra. I mean, everybody knew that there was a very good population of fishing cats in Koringa Wildlife Sanctuary even back then, because Koringa has these huge tracts of mangrove forest that can sustain a good population of fishing cats. So other than Koringa, there were many other locations, unprotected patches, wildlife sanctuaries as well, that had fishing cats. And so that's how we started surveying other locations. We found one population in outside Krishna, in the Krishna River estuary. And recently, a few years ago, we found the first, our camera trap recorded the first sighting of inland fishing cats. They have nothing to do with coastal estuaries or mangroves. They completely live in a small patch of riverine habitat in our place. It's close to where we are doing the project right now. And so that's quite interesting, because these fishing cats are quite adaptable to living in human dominated landscapes. And the sightings are also quite interesting in the fact that uh, the camera trap records, the field surveys, the tracks, and even the feces, everything is sited along a patch of a freshwater habitat. That's a river that passes and drains all the way into the ocean towards the east. But then these fishing cats are living right next to the human habitations. These are highly human dominated landscapes with croplands and villages all around. The people reported fishing cats lifting their chicken and even taking down small goat. Um, so it's quite interesting. I mean, there's a lot happening in our backyard, and I thought it's really worth studying more about them, learning where they live, how they live, and what can be done to address the threats and conserve the last remaining inland population of these fishing cats in our region, right? Because there are also very good patches down south in Krishna and Godavari where the local wildlife authorities are doing a great job, and there is actually a very good population of fishing cats. But then there are also other areas which are unprotected, and we barely know where they live, how they live. And these are the places where we need to engage local communities to reduce the threats to fishing cats. So that's how my fascination started back in 2012 about fishing cats. Yeah,
So, you make this journey seem very linear, but I'm sure there were challenges along the way trying to figure out, okay, here's
yeah.
the challenge, here's the problem. What do I do about it? So, you founded the Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it got started, and how it relates to the fishing cat?
Yeah. So Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society was officially formed with all the paper documentation and formalities done in 2014. But the idea was conceived long back when I was working in the zoo, and then even I worked as a protected area interpretation consultant for 4 years. And then before that, I also worked as a zoologist. So the idea was always there. So the Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society we thought that we should form a formal organization to exclusively focus on lesser known species because with all due respect, tigers, Asiatic lions, leopards, and elephants get so much attention that they deserve. But at the same time, there are other species that lack conservation attention and absolutely they're neglected. And the landscape itself where we work, Eastern Ghats, is regarded as some scrub jungle or a wasteland. Wetlands themselves are regarded as wastelands in most of these areas. So we thought, yeah, we should exclusively dedicate this organization to work towards lesser known species like Indian pangolins, fishing cats, for instance, um, rusty spotted cats, and there are also lots of reptiles, snakes, lizards, and migratory birds. So the lesser known species, they also deserve conservation attention, and also it's pretty difficult to get support for their conservation, as I said, because they are less charismatic, unlike the cute looking pandas or elephants or tiger cubs. But still, they are important because I usually don't believe in the fact that if you protect a species which is an apex predator, the entire habitat is saved or the ecosystem is conserved, because there are so many different types of varied habitats and ecosystems where these charismatic species don't live, but they're equally important for our own survival. So it depends, it's highly contextual. We cannot generalize these theories. And so that's how it started. And the main challenge in the Eastern Ghats is it's a very difficult habitat to work. It's humid, it's hot, the terrain is very difficult to maneuver. Uh, but at the same time, there are challenges. There are challenges with people. People, as you know, for a conservationist, it's more your job makes you more to work with people. You've got to work more with people and less with animals because you want to save those animals, and the threats are coming from people, right? Anthropogenic, everything is like human induced. So that's how the main challenge is working with these people and engaging them in conservation of your target species. Um, the second challenge is also to put together a very good team, an effective, competent, reliable team. It's not so easy. Being a grassroots level nonprofit, we don't have all that foundation and the brand value of good NGOs, established NGOs. So being a grassroots level nonprofit, putting together a great team is also quite difficult. Luckily, I have one at the movement, and it took, of course, quite a lot of time, effort, uh, and resources to put together a good team. And yes, as I mentioned, the third most important challenge has always been to get funding for the lesser charismatic species. It's even donors now. It's good to see a change in the perception of donors and grantors worldwide. That some attention is being also given to small wild cats and other lesser known species in the recent past. Yeah,
So when you talk about the how much of your work is actually with people rather than wildlife, that
yeah,
can be challenging, but it's also, I think, important to recognize as a wildlife conservation is that that's the biggest issue for these wildlife is human source. But you can a lot of people who follow the Eastern Ghats on social media and check out the
mm,
work that you do. You post a lot about responding to calls,
mm.
Cobras or penguins or fishing cats. And can you talk a little bit about What do those calls entail? What are people usually calling about, and how do you respond to that?
Yeah. So as an organization, our main focus has always been with human wildlife conflict management, because that I think is the most challenging part. Also, the not so sexy, dirty part, because where you've got to work with people on the ground and multiple stakeholders, not just villages, but the government and other multiple stakeholders. Sometimes politicians are there. So you've got to work with different groups of people to ensure the long-term survival. And then that's the challenge, like what we do as an organization is skill building, capacity building is most important, not only to manage conflict effectively, but also to coexist with these wild animals, learn how to live with them, and learn how to protect them, and learn how to benefit from protecting these natural resources and put that into practice. So, this capacity building has always been our core agenda. It has always been our main activity, capacity building of local communities. In some contexts, we also say affected communities, because there is certainly loss of life and property due to wild animals in some cases. And education awareness is great for children, that we always do. And third is what we say as field conservation. The field conservation aspect entails rescuing animals, because sometimes these large king cobras or pangolins, or these wild animals, that they sometimes, in many cases, wild boars, when they enter into human habitations, people are confused. They don't know what to do, how to behave, um, and then they call us. So and they call us because they trust us. It took quite a lot of time to build that trust. Earlier, they used to take indecisive actions, uh, and resulting in negative interactions with local wildlife. So when we attend a rescue call, we always ensure that the animal is safely bagged, or sometimes there is not even a requirement for removing the animal, or in fact relocating it, or physically handling it. All you need to do is just give assurance that it will go away, and you just have to be there. For instance, in one king cobra rescue call, the snake was there. It was swimming, but it was trapped because of all the people coming around and you know doing all this disturbance. But then we were called, we went. There was always a scope to remove the snake, tail it, and bag it. But then it's a natural habitat. We don't really need to remove it. So we explained to the locals. They knew us. We have been working there for quite a few years now. And so they acknowledged, and we stayed there overnight. I put my team there. They stayed. They put up tents and stayed there overnight to make sure that the locals are safe and they feel safe, in fact. And then, of course, the snake was never seen the next day, right? I mean, all the way till today. Even when we go there, we ask them, "Did you see the snake again that was spotted in the canal?" They say no, they didn't. So it's almost like, the rescue call we always attend. For instance, even if I get a rescue call right now, I'm speaking to you, I would say, okay, can we wrap up in 5 minutes, because I got a call, because, or I'll send someone who is more reliable, because that's how we work. We build relationships with communities, the trust, because trust building is really important, and that's how we save animals as well. So the field conservation entails this rescues and habitat conservation, habitat preservation programs as well. So this is how we attend rescue calls, and so that's those posts must be showing all the time on the Facebook, and because we value it a lot, and we'll do our best. Day or night doesn't matter. Our phones are always on, and we attend rescue calls all the time.
Well, it's admirable how much you had to do to build up that trust, because it's true. How do people, if they're in a situation, they go, "Oh my gosh, who do I call?" It's incredible now that they feel, "Oh, I'll call the Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society." So congratulations on that, because I realize how much time and effort that must have taken.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of young wildlife biologists or conservationists or just wildlife enthusiasts that are figuring out, how do I get started? How do I do this? We have a lot of incredible team members that have come a really long way and do what you're doing. But what do you suggest for people that want to get started? What's step one, step two? Any advice you might have?
The step one would be to volunteer. Wildlife conservation itself, it's not a very prolific field in the sense that you cannot expect any high returns, high income. It's more like passionate job. It keeps you happy. You can sleep well. At the end of the day, you go back to bed and sleep well, right? Because you're happy with what you're doing. And so, wildlife conservation, if anybody is interested, the best way to start off is to volunteer. Volunteer in the zoos, local zoos, or at organizations. There are always so many volunteer opportunities uh, across the world. Even in places like India, now we have so many opportunities to volunteer with wildlife organizations. So you end up learning a lot, spending the time, meeting people, doing things practically. So volunteering is step one. Step two is slowly uh, work your way up to intern with these organizations or in projects as an intern. If you get paid internship, that's fine. Otherwise, you still can do that internship where your responsibility sort of scales up a little bit. You have more things to do. And so that internship also prepares you well, makes you understand the challenges out in the field. And that's where you can choose whether to continue in the path or just to stop it right there. And so that, I think, the best way is to do it. I mean, nobody expects money to volunteer when you are volunteering, or internship as well in many cases. But then, that gives you that invaluable experience and an understanding of the challenges that's actually way ahead. And so that, I think, is the best way to start off. Other than that, there are so many organizations now that offer certificate programs. They offer degrees in wildlife management, also short-term programs for wildlife management. So that can also be done on an academic point of view if you're really keen to do that. So, and then the most important thing is you've got to have a goal. Why are you doing all this? I mean, the first thing in my life that struck to me was, let's conserve Eastern Ghats wildlife, because this is where I'm from locally. And always have a goal. Where is this heading? I mean, you're gaining skills, experience, but what do you want to do in life ultimately? That matters a lot. And then start off as a local conservationist all the time. uh, Nowadays what you see is this colonial conservation. One of my senior mentors, Jim, would say that term. That's because the projects are all over the map, and that person keeps traveling and visiting places. And I don't know if that's called conservation, but it's better to do it at a local level, a small scale, start up small scale. You don't have to be really big right from the beginning. So, and then always sort of try to see, nowadays it's mostly about addressing threats. So my suggestion would be, aim to address those threats all the time. And then there are so many opportunities where you can even get a job or get projects independently, freelancing, independently funded projects. You can join in NGOs, wildlife NGOs. You can start your own non-profit as well, but it takes time. It's a long journey. You'll have to be very, very what do you say, persistent with your efforts, and never get demotivated. There are always setbacks at every level, and it's a long road ahead. So it's tough. So you always have to choose. And there are also other opportunities, by the way. You can take up photography or videography. That entails some investment in the beginning, but it does have good returns. So it's more like a storytelling. You can also be like a science communicator. I am still a science communicator. I was a science communicator in the past. So that is also one way to kind of plan your career in wildlife conservation. So yeah,
Well,
anything
thank
else?
you so
I mean,
much for that, because I think it helps for young wildlife biologists to figure out how to get started, and that's all helpful. And to talk about your challenges too, because that's the majority of your
yeah.
experiences, all the roadblocks and how to get around them. And so the part of the thing too is that a lot of your projects do field work. We're mostly conservation focused, but you do field work. And as you know, it is exhausting. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard physical work, and you go to sleep really tired. Can you talk about a little bit about what it's like in the field? And then do you have like any memorable experiences that you think, oh, yeah, field work? Boy, I remember that one time. Could you share that with us?
Well, to be honest, every day is a memorable experience, and I should say that fieldwork is enjoyable. I mean, you climb up a mountain, you take a walk in the forest, and you work with these villages. I mean, it's real fun. So it's definitely physically exhausting. Sometimes it gets very dehydrating too, because the summers get really hot here, very humid. And but still, I think that's the best part compared to writing grants, submitting reports, things like that, which you need to sit, do it, concentrate. It's psychologically very draining. But fieldwork is fun. In fact, going on a boat, or off-roading, reaching to remote villages, working with people, understanding the conflicts, uh, witnessing what's happening out there, uh, the first-hand experience that you get. It's really, really interesting. And well, I really don't have anything that I can say, but the, you know, what was that? I mean, let me think. The first fieldwork days was not here. In fact, okay, in the Eastern Ghats, if you ask me, um, there was a pangolin. Yeah, there was a pangolin that got trapped in a well back in 2008, I think. And I wasn't associated with the zoo, but I was there locally, and I was consulted. I went there. I rescued the pangolin from the well, and that was the first time I saw a live pangolin. By the way, in 2006, and well before that, I only had road kills recorded. And that was the first time I handled the pangolin and saw that. We handed over that to the local wildlife authorities in the zoo. But it's such a weird looking animal. When we released it, it went beautiful, against that backdrop. So it was my first experience was a rescue. I'm really sorry. I mean, like as I said, it's like I always see myself in the middle of the conflict, humans, wildlife, and I'm there, but not really out there enjoying. But as if you're out in the wilderness every minute, like it's undescribable. You cannot just grade it. Every field trip is so enjoyable. But this time when I saw that pangolin, it's so weird looking, beautiful animal, like out of nowhere. Uh, it's like a creature that came from the space, and yet it's a mammal. And many people thought that they saw the animal for the first time in their life, and some even thought it was an alien. And that experience was really memorable, almost like it was 13 years ago. And my first snake experience was also good. I had a red sand boa. Uh, so my uncle used to give snake shows, snake education programs back then. And so the red sand boa would sleep in my pocket. I would keep it in my pocket, and I just just take it out whenever I want to show it to the public. And so the sand boa got so used it would sleep in my pocket. And so that's how I really liked it. And sometimes it used to come out and just come over, dangle over my shoulder, and sometimes also over my neck, and people would scare, oh no, there's a snake coming out of your pocket. And that was so fun. And that experience, the red sand boas are very mild and docile snakes. They don't bite. I mean, practically they don't bite. I've never seen red sandboa striking. Um, and so that experience was, as a child, that was the most memorable experience I had with any wild animal. Is this when I was handling this red sandboa? Yeah,
So you've
I don't know if that answers your question.
no, it did. Thank you. You have a really interesting combination of starting off, looking at the behavior and other aspects of captive animals in the zoo, and then now you're out in the field. And so, can you tell us a little bit about your experience recording the behavior of zoo animals and how that kind of inspired you to look closely at the behavior of wild animals?
Yeah. So again, coming back to Vizag Zoo, it's one of the unique zoos in the country. It has near naturalistic enclosures, pretty much like open enclosures with natural vegetation. So the most of these animals didn't actually needed further enrichment. As a biologist, I used to record their ethograms, all the repertoire and the social and non-social behaviors of wild dogs, mostly because that was a project I was taken in to document the ethogram of wild dog that has never been done anywhere. Um the New Guinea singing dog ethogram was done, but then wild dogs, we do have that. It's not exhaustive, but still we have very good recording of all the social and non-social behaviors of wild dogs. So I think I used to mostly sort of document the behaviors when they are under stress, behaviors when they are offered food, behaviors during breeding season, um, behaviors when they feel solitary, like sometimes the pack animals are separated because of infighting. So these are the mostly I used to observe animal behaviors. And then I used to wonder, okay, so this is exactly how you're actually looking at captive animals behaving in that way. And I always had this at the back of my mind, thinking, wondering that how it would be like to see wild dogs in the wild. The ethogram of wild dogs in the wild would be having more and more and more social behaviors, because out there they are in their territory, their natural habitat, and but here they are in captivity, but still they had a lot of an array of social behaviors. So that's how I started this curiosity of observing animals. And I was an avid watcher of, what do you say, National Geographic and Discovery channels. That's what I come from a very middle class, lower middle class, I would say, because my grandparents used to live in thatched houses, and until recently, we used to live only in rented houses. So all the source of information we had back then, I'm a 90s kid, was in the late 90s. We had this connection for the television. We had a black and white television. I'm sure most of them had at that time. uh, and these animal shows, there was no Animal Planet back then. There was only National Geographic and Discovery. And so we used to watch a lot of this. That had a very good influence. It still has, because storytelling is very, very powerful. And these amazing organizations, these corporates like Disney and National Geographic, they're really good at doing that and influencing. So uh, they always show these animals behaving in the wild, expressing different behaviors. So that also had a very keen influence to actually watch these animals in the wild and do something for their conservation. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And it's incredible because the penguins. You always see that penguins are very they have a very interesting way of moving about and their personality and their so I can just imagine you having one in your hands going, wow, this is what everybody's been talking about. And for sharing, I think it's a really remarkable to start having this really close relationship with animals in the zoo, and then taking that impactful experience and going out and saying, okay, I want to protect these animals in the wild too. So it's been a really pleasure to have this conversation with you. And if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do so. If not, I want to thank you.
One message I would like to have with all the youngsters who are really keen to take up wildlife conservation, because I just have one message, because you just have to think at what scale you're going to make an impact. Because at the end of the day, the scale matters. I mean, you can always go back to bed thinking that I saved a fishing cat or I rescued a snake, but then it all boils down to threat reduction, like how many acres of forest or how many individual animals you saved over a period of time. Because nowadays, and mostly, it's the human behavior that's causing damage, loss of biodiversity. So your actions should be always aiming at changing that human behavior, which is a lifetime's work. It's not as sexy as clicking photos or filmmaking or whatever. So that I would say is the most challenging, and I would encourage youngsters to take that up as they grow into reputed wildlife biologists and conservationists. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing that and to telling people not to give up, because it's easy to want to with all the challenges in wildlife conservation, especially now. But thanks for sharing your story. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about the Eastern Ghats Wildlife Society, you can go to eghats.org, see what the group is up to. They're also active on social media and have some, really interesting footage of the work that they do and, what they feel is really important. And thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to our next interview. And then also, again, thank you for being so active this Fishing Cat February. Keep it up. We're really excited for the coming up weeks. So thank you so much, Murthy. It's been a
Thank
pleasure,
you.
and keep chugging along. We hope that COVID-19 hasn't been too harsh on the project.
Oh yeah, exactly. Luckily, we have our own village level, networking people out there, like what we say, para-ecologists. So although during the lockdown we were literally house arrested in the house, snakes were rescued, programs went on, but not at a really good scale as much as we wish to. It did have a profound impact on the funding, and we did end up losing some cameras as well. And of course, FCCA. I mean, I should actually recall this experience. Back in 2015, we had the first international fishing cat symposium in Nepal, and that's where I had a warm welcome from all the members of FCCA. That's when we even started working, and we brought out a plan, comprehensive management plan for fishing cats across the range countries. It's a global strategy. The IUCN assessment was also done there. So I'm really thankful for my fishing cat colleagues, actually, because they have always been so friendly, so encouraging, so supportive. And so personally, my heartfelt thanks, deepest gratitude to Fishing Cat Conservation Alliance for always being there for me and supporting me in every way. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad that you added that, because it's one thing that's really beautiful about the Fishing Cat Conservation Alliance is that in reality, it's a really big family. And the communication that we do every day, it's really incredible. And I think it's inspiring to see all of these other working groups popping up for the other small cats and, with the support of the Small Wildcat Conservation Foundation. So yes, it's a very supportive network. And I think we shall all be very proud of the work that's being done for the cats, and praying for a better 2021.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so
Have a good
much, and good luck in the field. Good luck with your work, and have all the best. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Bye.
joining us.